Everyone talks about anxiety, but very few people know what it actually means. It's Mental Health Month, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Dina and Mahnoor, to talk about what anxiety is, what it isn't, how to know when we're teetering onto a problem, and how we can address it. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mental Health Month,
Yeah.
anxiety, common mental health challenge.
Yep.
How many clients, what proportion of clients would you say present with symptoms of anxiety?
A big chunk, I would say.
Yeah.
Even clients not coming to see me for anxiety at some point in the therapy journey do struggle with some form of anxiety.
Yeah. And I think I like to frame it in a way too of like not pathologizing it as much as I feel like perhaps on social media it comes out as like we should all experience anxiety. It's when it gets out of control and out of, the range that's proportionate in terms of functioning that it becomes an issue. But the fast-paced nature of life here lends itself to a lot of people struggling with managing it, with understanding it, and I would say being really scared of the symptoms that come when they're experiencing anxiety. So it's almost normalizing those feelings as well.
Yeah, I think this is really important. And so, what you've shared in terms of people coming to you for therapy that are experiencing anxiety, either as the presenting problem or as part of what it is they need support with, I would agree across the board at Thrive. And I think many of our colleagues in other places would say the same. At the same time, anxiety, like fear, anger, and other things, is an emotion. It's part of the normal human experience. And this is what I was really alluding to earlier on in the episode. It's we use the word, but do we actually know what it means? And is it the big bad wolf that it has been made out to be? And when does it kind of move from this is a healthy human experience to this is something that's creating issues or challenges in my life?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to speak to that, Sarah, too, I find that people that maybe are only using social media as their source of like mental health resource come to therapy, and it's usually, I'm struggling with so much anxiety and it's so overwhelming. And I like to also start with this idea of if we already struggle with the resources and tools to name emotions in general, and the only label I have is that this is anxiety, as soon as you work with clients a little bit with the feelings wheel and recognizing the range of emotions that we have in general, not only do they start to realize like, oh, wait a second, maybe this feeling isn't really anxiety, it's something else. And the anxiety is masking that, and or there's not even any clarity of what our body is signaling to us in terms of emotion. As soon as we start to be really, really detail oriented about what is this feeling, what else could it be, and to be more curious with our experiences anyway, the conversation shifts entirely. And the focus then becomes, oh, wait a second, I'm a human. I experience a range of different emotions.
Yes.
And we start to then be able to see anxiety for what it is and what it kind of causes in people's lives in terms of symptoms.
And even differentiating situational anxiety versus an anxiety disorder. Anxiety, in part, is an evolutionary mechanism as well, designed to keep us safe. Of course, that does present problems where nowadays we're trying to personally and professionally excel and grow and be in situations that aren't necessarily comfortable. So of course, as we are challenging and trying to like get out of our comfort zone, a level of anxiety does come up, whether it's nervousness, fear, but really trying to differentiate that from that like anxiety disorder. And to add to Dina's point, alongside social media, even ChatGPT, AI tools, when we're not kind of feeding it enough information and it's just kind of pointing out, yes, you have anxiety. And that's something that we're then sitting with and trying to navigate without then, of course, the tools on how to really work through it effectively.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of different things. So one of them is that this word is used a lot, and a lot of times it's not used correctly. And it might be what prompts people to walk through our door. But then when we peel back the layers and look more deeply into some of the secondary, tertiary emotions and understand how things are fitting together, it changes the conversation. And I think you also bring up a very important point, Mahnoor, which is there's a difference between something that happens across domains, that's a pattern, whereas something might happen in a specific situation where that situation calls for that level of anxiety or nervousness. So, for example, if you need to give a speech in front of a huge crowd, you should feel a little bit nervous. I mean, the level of nervousness or anxiety might vary from person to person, but it is completely acceptable and expected in that moment. But if you are experiencing that every time you enter a meeting in your workplace or you're attending a group dinner where there's more than 2 people, then that might be more of a problem in social context and something that we need to investigate and address.
Yeah, where it's really impairing your like daily functioning more regularly.
And even that, the way you described that, Sarah, too, is like I've seen with clients that it does escalate over time, which is, okay, it started with, I got a little bit uncomfortable in a group setting and I had to get away, but then now on Zoom calls, but now one-on-one. And it just, it's like a domino effect of experience too. And then they start, because of that initial anxiety they felt where it wasn't named, it wasn't resolved, and there were no tools to manage that initially, it takes over entirely. And then I think that's what happens too, is like anxieties, I don't want to call it a monster, but something in terms of external to us that once we label it as something that's defining of who we are, it has a way of manifesting and taking over, which is why with a lot of clients, I like, especially when anxiety has gotten to this level, to depersonalize it away from us as people. And in the same way that I said a monster, which I'm thinking of like a cute monster once we take it and depersonalize it, is how can I sit with a client in the first few sessions and ask them to describe anxiety and personalize it so that we can take it, put it in a little box in front of us and examine what it is. Because as soon as we create that distance, they can start to see it from a different way and realize that it's not necessarily out to get them in the way that they think, and its function is actually one that we should be curious about and we should question a little bit more.
Absolutely. Even adding to that, like the self-doubt it kind of creates in terms of what you're thinking, just kind of questioning every action, decision, thought, it becomes a monster, as you said, right? But to be able to kind of understand what is maybe a helpful thought versus an unhelpful thought, what is mental, cognitive, or physiological, behavioral, how it kind of manifests, even through avoidance, right? That kind of avoidance cycle it creates. Understanding it is so important in order to then be able to, you know, whether labeling and then understanding or just understanding the symptoms and how it's manifesting, to then be able to manage it.
Yeah, I think noticing is very important. Understanding is very important, and then having some of the tools and techniques to be able to manage. And I really love as well what you were sharing about separating it, because a lot of times, whether it's anxiety or something else, people will come to us and say, I am this, and it's a label and it defines me, rather than I am me, I am a person with many pieces and parts, and this is something that comes up for me. And so getting that separation, that space, makes it easier to tackle the monster. And you know, when you were saying monster, I don't know if this is what you had in mind. Have you read the book, The Color Monster?
Yes.
That's like the color monster. That's all I can think of, blue, even though blue is, I think, sadness. But anyway, like I'm seeing it right now. Okay. So people walk in the door with it. That's not always the reason. What are some of the symptoms of anxiety that people might experience?
I would say, even commenting to what Mahnoor was saying about the varying ways it shows up, I would say mostly with clients, it's the immediate physiological symptoms and experiences in their body that don't make sense. And a lot of the clients I see have been to doctors and they're trying to find out why they are physically experiencing things, heart palpitation, pain in different parts, especially their stomach, their chest, all of these different physical symptoms where they're like, I've been to every doctor. They tell me I'm okay. What's wrong with me? What's happening? And I feel like that's one of the first signs of like, because I feel like we're so disconnected from our bodies, that alert, probably there were many signs before this,
Yes.
but the alert of the body, because we're so disconnected from it, is so alarming that they're coming in a state of panic of like, please help me figure out what's wrong with me. And I've seen the transition over time with clients recognizing that it's anxiety and finding the tools to manage it, that they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I have so much control and agency over this experience, even though it felt so out of reach for me.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it's mostly physical first in terms of presenting symptoms.
Absolutely. Even like to add to that, through the cultural lens, it is where you haven't really grown up understanding anxiety or mental health, as you said, like through panic attacks, heart palpitations, chest tightness. Usually that first step is going to a GP, understanding what's wrong. Is it my heart? So to understand that actually anxiety can present in these ways, in these physical, physiological ways, is so important. But I also see especially the mental cognitive part in terms of overthinking, self-doubt, just questioning a lot of things, relationship anxiety, that overthinking level and the cognitive distortions, unhelpful thinking styles that lead to that is such a big part. And both of these, of course, are very linked, the physiological and mental piece.
I agree totally. And I think they end up aligning, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and first to mention too about seeing a GP, I think it's so great that people do that, because even in my approach, it's always going to be, let's rule out this so we can identify what's happening. So it's amazing that people are actually seeking answers holistically instead of through one avenue. But yes, this idea of overthinking and like a lot of the thinking traps. And like Sarah, you mentioned in the beginning, it's the distinguishing factor for me is how much is it impacting functionality to a level that becomes so overwhelming that every step you take is consumed with it. That's when it starts to become very obvious that it's taken over, perhaps past the normal range of experiencing anxiety. Whereas like overthinking and maybe, you know, falling into thinking traps sometimes is normal, and we all go through it in different ways. But to see it manifest in all areas of life, then it becomes something of like, wow, this has taken over to a point now that we have to look at it in a more specific way.
And bringing awareness to that. I often speak to my clients about the cognitive triangle, how our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are so interlinked, and how those negative thoughts or negative emotions are going to come out as, you know, I just want to stay in bed all day. I don't really want to, you know, go out, meet friends, do something healthy for myself. And then the next day that leads to more guilt, criticism, anxiety. And just recognizing that pattern, building that awareness is so eye-opening to help kind of see that, okay, can I intervene at any of these levels then?
Yeah, it opens up the options. And as you were saying before, Dina, it's really important for people to see that they have agency and control, especially when they're experiencing anxiety, because a big part of anxiety is feeling like you're out of control. And when you were sharing about, you know, clients coming your way after having gone to a GP because of the physiological symptoms, I'm imagining someone who's struggling with anxiety, knows there's something wrong, can't figure out what it is, compounding that anxiety. And then, you know, as you were saying as well, Mahnoor, like this connection between the emotions and the behaviors. Now they're fearful, they're anxious, there's a lot of worry, a lot of hypothetical worry, we catastrophize, so many things happen. And then obviously that's going to have ripple effects into our relationships with people. Maybe we're going to start showing up in work or other community spaces in a different way. For sure, we're not going to be sleeping properly, and all of those other things that are good for us. So it is really a domino effect, and there are so many pieces. But at the same time, that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of an entry point, and we can really help people identify where they feel the most in control and where they feel the most comfortable to start and hopefully yield some benefits.
Absolutely.
And even to what you're saying, Sarah, like the word that comes to mind is like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, that you create a story where that's it. This is just kind of dominating my life in every way. And it has this way of snowballing into all areas of your life. And it does become so disorienting. And I often find a lot of people, and that's that connection with depression too, that fall into a type of depression too while they're experiencing this because they feel stuck in it.
Yes.
And that's, for me, an important piece in the beginning is the significance of word choice when we're describing our emotional experiences, which is, I don't have anxiety, I'm experiencing symptoms of it, which is I am not this thing, something is happening to me and it's impacting me. And even our attentiveness to language use changes the way that our brain processes anxiety and what it does to us in terms of like the symptoms and the way we experience it. So I always encourage clients in the beginning to mind your words when you're talking about this, because I remember I had a supervisor who had described like using labels to define yourselves of like, I am this, as like when you're washing, like I'm thinking of a jar of like grape leaves. You have that label on it. And when you want to try to take the label off, it takes so much time to get it off of that jar. And that's how long it takes us to get out of the labels that either are placed on us, or especially with something like anxiety, even depression too, right? Where it completely dominates who you are as a person. And if we're just in the beginning, and I think that comes with like cognitive strategies to like untangle this, even if that's a starting point too, where we're just minding the way we talk about our experience with anxiety, I find it makes a world of a difference with clients.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important piece. Like, and often with clients, we talk about how powerful the mind is, what you kind of tell yourself and say to yourself, and how anxiety links to that with self-criticism, self-doubt. So if you do, tell yourself, yes, I am an anxious person. Like, this is me, going back to what we were saying, of course, that is going back to the self-fulfilling prophecies as well, what comes up and how you then present consciously or subconsciously. Whereas like with affirmations, trying to tell yourself that I do have control over these thoughts, over my actions. The brain is so powerful that it can start really holding on to roots in that too.
Definitely.
So in terms of the symptomatology and some of the signs of anxiety, we talked about some physiological things, emotional things, cognitive things, lifestyle things. What are some of the things that people are anxious about? What are the themes, the themes of anxiety?
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking just specific to here, I would say the work-life balance,
Absolutely.
which is in a lot of ways non-existent for a lot of people. Like the amount of stress and overwhelm people are under in terms of their jobs and the way that they work. It's like, even if I think of what we need as human beings on a baseline level, it's not being met with hours of work such as this. So that ends up being perhaps a feeding point to anxiety, which is I'm not sleeping well, I don't have time for myself, I'm so stressed at work.
Burnout.
Yes, and then the symptoms of anxiety like have a fertile ground to grow, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, even the smallest bit of anxiety can, we keep using sandball into something a lot bigger. So I find that work is something that is apparent. I also work with a lot of mothers too, and that ends up being something that causes a lot of anxiety just naturally as you transition in a different stage of your life. But also, again, not understanding what they're going through, and being able, again, to just verbalize it and express it. But I would probably say most of my clients, it's the work piece.
And even linking to the work, even through school and just the pressure nowadays in life, it's such a competitive environment here and globally. The performance anxiety, the perfectionism that links to that, always needing to be 110% to kind of get ahead. That mentality does lead to so much stress, so much anxiety, as you said, that fertile ground for the anxiety to grow. And other than that, even through social media and this connection, we are so disconnected, whether it's expats here away from like friends, family support systems, or even with the newer generation after COVID and you know, so much online school instability, there is this level of disconnection, being alone with your thoughts, with your feelings, not really having that support, which is an important piece in navigating anxiety. And especially when all these things really come together, these expectations, these struggles, a lack of self-care, a lack of support, it really does sandball, as you said.
And you would think of like, why wouldn't we have anxiety living under conditions like that, right? And that's why I think it's important to like circle back to this idea of like recognizing that it's a natural response to our environment.
Absolutely.
And I think even looking at it systemically than an individual issue is like, the way that things operate sometimes in our communities and our societies, that's what needs to be adjusted to reduce anxiety. And to put the burden of it on you entirely makes it seem impossible. And that's another piece of this too, which is kind of out of our control in certain aspects.
Yes. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you that there are systemic elements on a global scale. And I have also seen the same that the two of you have mentioned, which is the lot of work stress that can lead to burnout. Motherhood, parenthood, relationships in general create a lot of and maintain a lot of anxiety, whether it's romantic or platonic or work-wise and all of that. But then there was something, Mahnoor, that you were saying about the expectations. And I think if we take sort of like a CBT approach to it, it's like a lot of this stuff has its roots in our core beliefs, right? So we do, all of us see a lot of perfectionists, a lot of hardworking. Possibly there's 3 of them sitting in this room right now, as there often are in psychological communities. But a lot of times when people are in pursuit of that perfection and burning themselves out, it's stemming from a core belief of, you know, I'm not good enough. And what if I get exposed, and what does that mean for me? Or this like fear of failure or of disappointing people. So there's a lot of deep-seated stuff that also has its roots, I think, in our early childhood. Not to put everything on childhood and parents or anything like that. But
of course,
that fertile ground it's fertile from the time we're young.
Absolutely. These, as you said, the core beliefs really do lead to just how we think, the beliefs we have, and this expectation and this reliance on external validation.
Yes.
It leads to so much anxiety, and it's something not in our control. And of course, things outside our control will lead to more of that anxiety. So where in your mind, there's that voice that's always telling you, you have to do more, keep going, you know, you have to be perfect, whatever that means. It's never enough, right? You get to your goal, you move the goalpost, and it's adding more stress, more burnout. We're ignoring all these kind of signs and symptoms, and then we're just holding on for someone else to validate us. And if they don't, that's even more anxiety. Like,
and if they do, we don't believe it anyway.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, oh, well, but you have to say that. You're like my friend.
Minimizing that.
And if someone tells you 100 good things and there's like one room for growth, it's like, you see, I'm terrible. Everything I do is awful.
And we hold on to like that mistake we make. We'll play it like 10 years later even. It is damaging.
Definitely. Even as women, right? And the way that we're socialized to begin with, to put a lot of this burden of performance and having it all put together. And that's what I see a lot with mothers is like, I just had this life-changing experience of having a child, but wait a second, now I have to juggle everything equally and at the same time. But the answer is you can't.
No.
And you shouldn't have to. And the issue isn't you not being able to, it's deconstructing why you think you should.
Exactly.
Right? And even to your point, Sarah, about how not everything is connected to our parents, which I feel like, you know, a lot of people are in this wave now of like, my parents did this, my parents did that. And that's fine. I like to always center with clients too on, let's not just focus on parents, although their impact is, you know, grand in terms of experiences, but it's all relationships that we have throughout our life. It's friendships, it's, you know, experiences with teachers, experiences with like role models and coaches, and those are a framework of the way that we see the world. And even if we think of like attachment theory and attachment styles and how they lend that, even if we think of anxious attachment or avoidant attachment, like all of these are models that are created early in our life. And I have a lot of resistance from clients saying, well, I don't want to talk about my parents. I love my parents. And that's great. And we can operate from a space of two things can be true at the same time. I love my parents and I respect them and I don't want to distance from them, but I can also evaluate objectively how the way that I experienced my childhood continues to impact me. And my focus with clients is always, how is that still impacting you now? And is it a part of the anxiety story, right? Like, did you grow up feeling that way? And most of the time with clients, there is always a starting point that's so early in their life where they're like, yeah, I did have this feeling and I'm remembering it. And it was this moment in a classroom in the 3rd grade that I felt this feeling. And it's so similar to the one now. And then they start to realize, oh, wait a second, it's connected to my nervous system story. And then we can start to like look at it even deeper and more significantly. And that's where I feel a lot of the breakthrough with anxiety happens is, oh, wait a second, it's not something that came out of nowhere.
No.
It's a part of my story. And now I have the tools to work around it and understand it better.
Definitely. Adding to that anxious attachment style piece as well. I work with a lot of couples and it often comes up as individually or in that couples therapy situation with how we are responding, how we might struggle with trust and security in that relationship, which often, you know, we see personally the couple, the partners really can take that to heart and worry about like that trust and commitment in the relationship, but understanding how that's stemming from your past relationships, parental or not, that is such an important piece to understand that, you know, things do stem from back before you might have even known your partner and now this is coming up. So to understand yourself, your experiences, and then see how that's showing up for you personally or in your relationship is also so key to continue to grow that.
So true.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to anxiety, there are two things that people might not know, but I think are critical pieces of information. Number one, anxiety and depression, as you were saying earlier, Dina, are highly comorbid. So people will and can often experience both. And I think the most recent statistic that I'm familiar with is that 1 out of 4 people is going to experience one or both over the course of their lifetime. Now, we know that the story can begin early on and it can have relational inputs and there are physiological signs. There's also biological and genetic predispositions. The thing I think that is quite challenging for, you know, people in their 30s and older is that I'm not in that, I'm in that group, not the 30s, 30s and older, is that we're much less likely to actually know the family history because of stigma. Wherever we're from, things were more stigmatized. There was less awareness. People weren't diagnosed. But often when I meet with people and it's like, okay, well, do you have a mental health history in your family? Like, tell me about that. They're like, no one. I'm like, okay, well, is that there isn't one or that we don't know about one? And then often when you're having this conversation, an important figure in the life will be like, oh yeah, he or she was worried all the time. Or, you know, painting this, like a vignette, sharing a vignette of someone that sounds like they could have been experiencing anxiety at one point in time. So there is a genetic predisposition. It's a relatively common mental health challenge. And when we talk about it being a mental health challenge, we're not talking about the emotion or the worry happening in a snapshot. We're talking about a constellation of symptoms across the domains that we talked about, them infiltrating the different domains of our life. And we need to kind of understand how that all works together so that we can target and take action towards feeling better and also overcoming some of these challenges. Not anxiety. Anxiety doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You will always have it. And so people that come in saying, well, I don't want to be anxious anymore. Well, no, just like I want to have work-life balance. Well, no, it doesn't exist, and it's never going to happen.
And you need it. Like,
and
you need
you need it.
anxiety.
That's
Just learning to
we
control
were
it.
we were created that way for a reason.
Absolutely.
But in terms of strategies, so for anybody listening who's like, yeah, it's me. Yeah. I'm a new parent, or you know, I hate my job, or there were 4 alerts yesterday. Like, what do we tell them? What can they do?
I think if we are starting with the mental piece, just kind of questioning, challenging, sitting with those thoughts. Often we might try to ignore and suppress them, especially if we are used to having that anxious kind of disposition. So just understanding that, you know, okay, I can accept this. I can acknowledge that this might be an unhelpful, anxious thought. Understanding, I love to go through the distortions, unhelpful thinking styles with my clients. It's tough because growing up, whether, you know, it's something that at some point helped us, or we were taught how to think, you know, in these unhelpful ways, no one ever tells us, right, that these are unhelpful thoughts. These are going to lead to more anxiety, more overthinking, more worries. So just building awareness around those, and being able to challenge, process, question thoughts rather than just suppressing them. I kind of describe like suppressing as, you know, this messy closet when guests are coming and we're just like shoving everything in there, and something's going to rattle that, shake that handle, and everything's going to come out outside of our control. So understanding how to just be processing, challenging, and like neatly tidying up that closet so we feel this clarity in our mind can be so important.
Yeah. And I think one of the methods that I've used, well, 2 different ones that I think helped a lot of the clients that I work with. One is that one that I had mentioned before, which is even having some sort of visualization exercise where I'm taking this feeling that I have, and we start where are we feeling it in our body? A lot of people say their chest, their throat, their stomach. Taking it out, and this is like a visualization exercise, putting it in front of you and using your 5 senses to describe what it is. And I find immediately, even people that are hesitant with visualization, that they're able to connect with it. And the visual that you get after you create and see this, I like to call it a monster in the beginning, and name it, and then even your experience with it starts to change because it becomes a relational one, not one about me. And it becomes more of like, oh, Peter, like, why are you telling me that? Why am I feeling this way? Why are you feeling this way right now? And to depersonalize really, really helps. So I find even that first step of noticing. The other thing that I've been loving so much, I don't know if you guys have heard of the change triangle. Okay, there's a book that I recently read that I love so much, and it's like a branch off from a modality in therapy called AEDP, and it's this idea that anxiety is an inhibitory emotion, and the purpose behind it is to distract us away from a core emotion that we're too scared to sit in.
Yes.
And it's usually the case. I mean, if you think of anything that makes us so anxious, it's rooted in a core emotion that we can't really sit in because we can't do anything about it. When I'm feeling fear or anger, when we think of anger too, for example, so many clients that come in when it's not, they don't describe experiences of anxiety from parental figures in the traditional way, but models of anger, especially from dads, for example, where all of the things they describe about the experience of their father is screaming that it's anxiety, but it's because men and women experience and show anxiety in very different ways. So even to pay attention to those variations is important. So the change triangle is beautiful, even to reference it as a point of, oh, what is this anxiety distracting me away from feeling? life-changing in terms of even my approach with anxiety.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's really important, as you mentioned, like how anxiety is manifesting differently based on who you are, whether it's that gender difference, as in women do internalize, think about the thoughts a little more. For men, anger is such a common way of that to come out. And even culturally, I work with a lot of South Asian clients, and this self-doubt, especially for women, in what you have to do to like be good enough. And I think that's such a common thing, that when that is what you are told growing up, how that then impacts how you think and how you act in your everyday life, trying to please someone or be that like good enough figure. So working through some of these core beliefs, challenging them, and really seeing what's in your control and what's not. Other people's thoughts, feelings, opinions, the future, none of that is really in our control. So where that's our focus, there will be more anxiety. So I like to work on mindfulness and grounding, and just focusing on what is in our control, how we feel happy with and proud of ourselves. And that's something that really then changes a lot of that anxious thinking as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that based on our conversation, so we talked about a lot of the symptoms and the way that things show up. We talked about inputs from a historical perspective, as well as some of the life transitions, and then a lot of ways that we can tackle things. So there's the lifestyle stuff, which we didn't talk about too much, but sleeping well, sleeping better, putting some energy and effort into our nutrition and our exercise.
Alcohol use.
Substance use, for sure. Challenging, first of all, drawing awareness to our emotions and our thoughts, challenging and restructuring those things. Mindfulness, visualization, exercise. The good news is, for as common as it can be, and as many people that will face it over the course of their lives, there are so many evidence-based interventions. And so everyone can sort of experiment with what appeals to them, and hopefully start building their own toolkit to first alleviate some of the symptoms, and then kind of get to the core of what's going on in order to live a more meaningful and purposeful life.
I always tell my clients as well that we'll try something, but we can personalize it. It might not work, right? And that's the
Exactly.
challenge with social media or AI as like therapists, is it's more of a generalized approach, but not everything will work for everyone. So how do we tailor this to you and make it really effective and work for you?
And you have to work your way through it. Okay. Thank you both so much for your insights about anxiety and what we can do to better understand it and to work through it. I really appreciate your time today.